Hello, our truth warriors. It's Chris here from the Atlantic Underground podcast. For many years now, people have asked me where the best place to go to buy precious metals. We're talking silver, we're talking gold, we're talking platinum. There's only one place I would recommend people go in this day and age for fast delivery, for excellent customer service, and that is Miles Franklin. They have been the best supplier right throughout Canada, right throughout the US, and posting all around the world. I do suggest you check them out. You're going to find the links here in this video to contact them. And if you use the code AU for Atlantic Underground, you're going to get the VIP service and they're going to take great care of you. Fast delivery, best prices, best service. You cannot go wrong. Miles Franklin. Check them out, everyone, and you'll thank me later. Thank you.
Hello, our truth warriors, and welcome back to a fantastic episode of the Atlantic Underground. Today, we have a returning guest, Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin, who's going to come and talk to us on a regular basis now to keep us up to date on what's happening with precious metals and really where you should be investing and making sure that your money's safe moving forward in the future. Andy, it's great to see you back. How are you, sir?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me, Chris. Chris, I appreciate it very much.
No, it's always good to talk to you. So, today is a historic day in regards to the date. We're actually talking September the 11th, and this day will be synonymous in history for so many people. Now, I remember when the Twin Towers came down. I remember watching it from an office in Liverpool, in England, where everyone was shocked and horrified. I don't think we got much work done that day because everyone seemed to turn the screens to what was going on in the news. Can you remember where you were and how you felt on the day that this happened?
Yeah, I remember backing out of my driveway, um, going to work, hearing it on the radio. And I remember I always used to listen in Minneapolis to the sports radio station, KFAN. Um, for whatever reason, I would listen to it on the way to work, and they broke in and said the building just hit the World Trade Center. So I pulled back into the driveway, ran in to see it, and then watched the rest of it unfold. I mean, in many ways, you could say that's the day that this country lost its innocence. And so much has changed ever since that day, in so many ways. I had my oldest child at the time was barely one, and I just remember everything changing from that day forward with my business, with the way I looked at the world, um, and everything from, traveling, taking your shoes off, feeling as though, certain things about this country weren't as safe as they once were. And yeah, I would say very much, Chris, I look at the world very differently ever since that day.
Yeah. No, I really kind of got shook up financially from what happened in 2008, which led me into precious metals and looking into how the financial system operates a lot more closely. So back in 2001, I wasn't really paying attention, but how did this affect the markets in regards to precious metals? And was the shockwave sent through? Was it something that pushed things higher, or did it make things drop?
It didn't do a whole lot. I mean, gold and silver were kind of off the radar in 2001. I don't remember exactly what the price of gold was, but it had to have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $400. Not much higher, probably even less. And silver, probably south of $7 or $8 an ounce. So it began to change things in one respect. I think that was the beginning of a realization that the United States may not be the safest place to park your money. That you know prior to that, you had nothing but growth and prosperity in the United States. You had nothing but increased investment in the United States, and we began to see, at least in terms of my business, a lot more interest in precious metals, in looking away from traditional assets. Of course, it still wasn't somewhat of a uphill battle on our way up to 2008. And it was after 2008 that things really changed, where
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, I think the world was very different. And the drive for precious metals became real. And, you know, more than anything, the United States is a system, since Bretton Woods is no longer with us, is a system based on confidence. And 2001 was the beginning of the erosion of confidence, at least in terms of the very beginning of confidence, in terms of investing in the US, in my opinion, and looking to alternative investments as we got closer to 2008. And with the crisis, the great financial crisis of 2008, everything changed. In particular, precious metals. And what we began to see in 2008 was overt suppression on COMEX to hold back the tide of investment. And in 2008, we had a very interesting situation where the price of gold fell from 1,000 to 700 and silver from 21 to 9. Now, if any investment that you bought fell by 35% and 60% respectively, you would think there's no demand for that product as it's all getting dumped across the globe.
Yeah.
But in reality, what happened, and this is when the way I looked at the metals market really began to change, is that with the price collapsing, within a few days of that, every major mint in the world was sold out of product. The US mint, the Australian mint, the Austrian mint, the Rand mint, all of them. They were all sold out of product for the better half of the second half of 2008. We thought we were going out of business as there was no product to find. And what became very interesting, and if you think about it, if the price is falling, why is there no product? Why is no one in the retail side selling? Why am I getting phone calls from dealers across the globe in Ireland saying, "Can you sell me anything? My normal chains in Germany and Switzerland are sold out of product." Why was the Rand Mint sold out of product for the first time in 60 years and shut down? Why did the Perth Mint in Australia take no new orders since August, from August on? Why did the U.S. Mint shut down 8 times after that and was 16 to 18 weeks back ordered? Same thing with the Canadian Mint, working 3 8-hour shifts a day and 16 to 18 weeks back ordered. We were told by the U.S. Mint rep, don't ask us for product, don't call us, we'll call you. In an environment where the price is falling that much, you think there would be so much supply, it's just everywhere. But what we saw was a paper-driven price smash. And by the time that you were allowed to finally start locking in product again with the Canadian Mint or the U.S. Mint, which would have been into October or November, there were probably more like 8 to 12 week delivery delays with 100% premiums on silver. $9 silver, you paid $18 to $20 an ounce to buy it, and you would wait 2 months at least, if not longer. And the same thing with gold, huge premiums, long delivery delays. This is when I started to understand that the whole financial system was more complex than it was straightforward, that the derivatives the derivatives of the metals market itself were controlling the price, not the underlying asset. And it was this moment that reshaped the way that I looked at things. And then, of course, we marched all the way up to 1915 and gold and $50 silver in 2011. That was the previous peak. And again, things cycled. And well, here we are now with gold at $2,500 an ounce, which has outpaced every traditional asset since 9/11, every one of them. It's averaged a 9.9% compounding since 2001. It's outpaced the S&P 500 just barely, with dividends reinvested. It's averaged 9.6%, gold 9.9%. It's doubled the performance of the 10-year Treasury, has no counterparty.
Are you still there, Andy? I think we've just lost it just for a moment there. Let's just see if we can get you back online. Just 1 second. Hello, everyone. We are back. We had a little power cut there, but you know what? It takes a little bit more than that to stop us because we keep going and battling on regardless of what happens, which is always fantastic. Andy, it's great to have you back again. And I know that we can see a little bit of glitching. There's something obviously going on with the power system where you are, but you know, we're going to keep pressing on, and that's great. Tell us what's new and exciting that's going on at Miles Franklin at the moment. I know you were talking about a new website coming into place.
Yeah, I got a new website that's coming. It should be here any day now. And of course, in the meantime, if people want to reach us for our price list, which is will be as good or better than anyone in the country. It's far better than the prices we list on the website. Would be at info@milesfranklin.com. The Atlantic Underground sent me. No obligation. You want the prices? Let us know. Any questions you hear on this podcast or any other questions on IRAs, whatever, let us know. If you want to be contacted, put your phone number down. It makes it much easier for us to reply, because oftentimes when we send stuff to people, it will end up in their spam box coming from a precious metals company. We have pretty heavy duty spam software ourselves, so oftentimes we check our spam box 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day to make sure we're not missing stuff. So if you want to be contacted, always best to put your phone number down just in case. And for now, that's the best way to reach us. I am starting my own podcast. In fact, tonight I have my first live stream. Be the first one that I've done personally in about 4 years. And I come on everyone else's show, but I figure why not do it myself too? So going to throw my hat in the ring and do a live Q&A tonight at 9 o'clock and see how that one goes. Hopefully I don't screw it up too tremendously bad.
Well, you seem to do all right on all the other podcasts, so I can't see that happening. So it should be good.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. So what do you think's going to trigger a leap in metals? You know, we've seen, what are we at today? We're around about $29 today for an ounce of silver, or in that kind of realm.
Yeah, right now we have silver just under $29, about 28.85, silver at about 20, or gold at 25.15. Holding very strong. I mean, it's really holding very strong. But one of the things that I think leads to credibility, if you will, that metals are on the cusp of really taking off, would be some of the things that we see coming out of the LBMA, the London Bullion Metals Association, and the COMEX in terms of data. We can look at the LBMA as an example. At the end of July 31st, the amount of silver that was held within the LBMA vaults that were available for, they call it the float. Okay, there's 800 million ounces in the LBMA, of which roughly 500 million belong to the ETFs, and they're not for sale. The float, they call it, at the end of July 31st, 2024, was 336 million ounces of silver, or 10,440 tons. At the end of August, 1 month later, we saw 27 million ounces taken out from the July numbers to 309 million ounces, or 8.1% drawdown just in the month of August. Now, who the hell's got that kind of bread to take possession of 27 million ounces of silver within the month? And when you realize that that's almost 10% of what is available, several more months of this, we're going to have some serious problems. When we talk about, you know, this is a trend that can't continue. You know, the LBMA came out and said this is the lowest amount of silver we've ever had in our vaults since we started keeping records. It's a 140-year-old situation. Since 2020, a 140-year-old organization. Since 2020 on COMEX, the stand for deliveries, which became a common occurrence roughly in 2020. But before that, Chris, I'm not kidding you, man. No one stood for delivery, right? Delivery was always an option, but no one ever did it. It represented less than 1% of the contracts issued.
Yeah.
And since end of 2020, roughly November 2020, we have seen 24,000 24,072 tons of silver, 24,072 tons of silver delivered off of COMEX. And here again, no, you're talking roughly, wow, 400, almost 700 million ounces taken off of COMEX. Who's got that kind of bread is what I want to know. And when you talk about gold, 2,136 tons have stood for delivery since 2020. At the same time, you have Russia now increasing their purchases of gold to 8.2 billion rubles per day, the equivalent of 36,000 ounces. It's a 600% increase. That's roughly $90 million a day they're spending now moving forward. 90 million a day on gold every single day. And so when you talk about how they're doing this without it really destroying the markets, when you talk about the LBMA, Chris, they admit, they say, okay, we have 800 million ounces of silver, of which 300 million is the float, is not encumbered by the ETFs or whatnot. Yet they admit to trading 292 million ounces of silver every day, every single day. But the interesting thing is they say, but those numbers are 10 times understated because they only post the final settlement numbers. So you're talking, in essence, 2.9 billion ounces of silver per day. That's 3.5 times annual global mine supply, of which 95% of those contracts are paper. In other words, it's a paper contract, and it's the bank's ability to overwhelm the system with shorts that allows them to do that. And the same thing is true. They trade pretty damn close to 20 million ounces of gold per day, 10 times understated, 200 million ounces of gold per day. This is the scam that the West has been able to levy upon the world for the last 10, decades, at least, if not longer. Since 140 years, they've controlled the roost in this. And it's the thing is that these exchanges always allowed for delivery. No one ever did. There's something called exchange for physical, where you can buy in the West a contract and then deliver it, typically in London. But in 2015, the COMEX built a contract where this could be delivered to Brinks, Hong Kong, which is a actual COMEX vault in Brinks, Hong Kong. And it's weird because, it's not weird. It's just obvious. On the COMEX, they deal in 100-ounce gold bars, but they do have what's called the mini contract. And the mini contract is kilo bars. That so happens to be what the Shanghai Metals Exchange deals with. And so we've been seeing massive exchange for physicals where the metal is bought on a contract basis in the West off of COMEX, and then exchange for physical to Brinks, Hong Kong, delivered in the form of kilo bars off the mini contract. Once it hits Brinks, Hong Kong, it's picked up by a truck and probably brought to the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which deals in kilo bars. So when China buys soybeans and corn from Brazil and pays for it in yuan, those yuan are immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which is the only other tier one reserve asset, according to the Bank of International Settlements, and comes to them in kilo bars that were probably originated off the COMEX. It's kind of a vicious circle and not going to end well. So I guess what I'm simply saying is that what we have been seeing is these countries like India, like China, Russia. China's going all around the world, by the way. They're the second largest producer of silver on the planet. And, most people don't know that. They know that they're the number one producer of gold, but they're the number two producer of silver in the world. And they are now a net importer after decades of being a net exporter. And they're now importing, but they're flying all around Latin America in particular, and buying all the silver concentrate and doré, paying double what the West will pay. A doré bar is a bar that's refined by the miners down to maybe 50 or 60%, and they're very ugly. They take those bars and send them to the refiners, who then refine it to 999 fine, and pull out all the impurities. The concentrate would be like sludge that's very highly concentrated. They take all that and they can make bars out of it. But what they're doing is they're buying it directly from the miners, disintermediating the market, not pulling it off of an exchange, sending it back to China and refining it. And, you look at a country like China, the Eurasian continent is responsible for mining about 90% of the rare earths. China refined 100% of those rare earths last year. So we haven't really thought this green agenda out so well. But the bottom line is they have massive refining capabilities. So they take all the silver, concentrate and doré, they send it back to China, they refine it, doesn't come off of an exchange. It allows them to pickpocket everything that's not nailed down.
Yeah.
And they're using the Western suppression of the paper price to do this. And they have become very cunning, very sophisticated. And all of these countries are draining the exchanges. The only reason they're not bitching about the suppression is that we're playing right into their hand. It's like jujitsu. When someone comes at you, you use their leverage against them. Well, that's what they're doing with us. They're using our leverage of being stupid to support the illusion of a strong bond market and dollar market by suppressing the monetary metals against us by standing for delivery, and doing so at a fashion that is draining the exchanges at a level the world's never seen. So it will get to a point where things begin to change, and exchanges like Shanghai and Moscow and Dubai start to set the price. And that's not really far-fetched, because over the last 4 months, the cumulative volume on the Shanghai Metals Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange is up 200%, surpassing the volume we see on the COMEX. It's now the number 2 most heavily traded exchange on the planet. And at some point, when the West is no one is stupid enough to sell at these prices, you will see a shift, I believe, to these exchanges that will set the price on a much more accurate reflection. And they're the ones who buy it all, accumulate it all, produce it all, refine it all, and understand it better than the West does. We're playing a very dumb game, and we don't even know. Most of us don't even know what's being played. But in a world where commodities and transparency, a la blockchain, the marriage between those two, I believe will be the future of a new system. We are letting the natural resources of this country, those that we are holding on the exchanges, literally be stolen and bled down at these suppressed prices. And we're going to wake up one day and not understand the severe consequences of what we've done. Maybe we will understand it at that point. Right now, I don't think people quite understand how dangerous of a game this really is.
So if I'm understanding that right, China and probably some of the other BRICS nations are taking the raw source directly from the mining companies, which means that can't get to the normal exchanges or refiners to do what they're doing.
Right. And then it masks the true value and the true,
Yeah.
It doesn't come off of an exchange. And so I learned of this by doing an interview with a guy named Sean Kuhn, who is the CEO of Dolly Varden Silver, who said, yeah, it's happening all around Latin America. They're paying up. Whoa. You hear that?
Was that
My dog just freaked out and jumped about 80 feet. Oh, her heart's beating at about 3,000. I swear that was right above our house. Anyways, Sean said to us, oh, she's freaking out. It's okay, buddy. This is happening, that they're paying up to double what the West will pay for this unrefined silver. And so as a result, they're doing all they can to drain the exchanges, and not just the exchanges, go directly disintermediate the market, go right to the source and buy stuff that's unrefined and refine it themselves.
So we've got no real gauge of how much these countries are actually stockpiling in precious metals right now.
No, the IMF came out and said the amount of gold China owns is massively understated. We're supposed to believe they only have about 2,600 metric tons, yet they've been mining 300 to 500 metric tons per year for 25 years. There are people like Alistair McLeod who will tell you that China has somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 metric tons, which would be 5 times more than we supposedly do. They're the largest producer, the largest accumulator, and they're going all around the world. And not only that, with the Belt Road Initiative and the BRICS, I mean, they're striking deals with all of these countries that are underdeveloped but resource rich. We'll build a gold mine for you, a silver mine, an oil refinery, an oil rig. We'll build the roads, the bridges, the maritime channels. We'll help you industrialize your country, bring your natural resources to the market. And for that, in a cooperative manner, we want a peace. They're thinking way ahead. They don't go around with a gun to people's heads. They go around and say, with a handshake, let's do this in a cooperative manner, because they see where we are heading into a situation that is more about commodities. As Zoltan Pozsar says, he or she who has the commodities makes the rules. And I think that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's it. We interviewed Michael Yon last week, and we got into the infrastructure that's even coming out of Panama, going across the Darien Gap through to Colombia at the moment. And this whole Belt and Road Initiative that the Chinese are doing, he's saying, they've already got the railroads built and they're even delivering, Alibaba stuff and Temu stuff directly into Taiwan. And they really do have right now their eyes set on having the global logistics and supply chain in place for the products that they're certainly wanting to bring across, and globalize everything with what they're producing there. And many people are saying, oh, China is starting to lose traction, but from what I'm seeing and from what they're actually putting into place in regards to infrastructure, they are really mindset now on globalizing their operations and being the #1 country in control of that. And certainly if they're looking at doing this with the precious metals and they're holding so much precious metals now, it almost tells me that they've also got their eyes on having control over the very financial system. Maybe the dollar will no longer be the world reserve currency in that regards. And if they can control a world reserve currency with the likes of precious metals and their holdings, they will be a power to be reckoned with.
Well, it's not only the precious metals, and I agree with everything you just said, Chris, but it's also the base metals. As an example, they bought the London Metals Exchange, which are all the base metals. They own it, and now they're building warehouses within China to stockpile the metals that are traded on the LME. They're striking deals all around the world for everything from soft commodities like wheat and soybeans and corn, and building the BRICS grain exchange. And the comment that came out of the BRICS grain exchange, the gentleman who's running it, should transcend everything that we're talking about here in precious metals and base metals. And the comment was, look, we produce more wheat than the West does. We produce more of these soft commodities and consume more than the West does. Yet we don't have the ability to control its price because that's all done on COMEX. With the development of the BRICS grain exchange, that will change. Okay, yeah. Well, the same thing could be said about the LME and the LBMA with the base metals and the precious metals. So you have, this environment where they understand. The head of the Shanghai Metals Exchange in 2015 said, when China is given the permission to speak at the table, the real price of gold will be known. So these systems in the West, which are akin to Bernie Madoff, well, Bernie ran a good shop until everyone said, give me back my money. And then it became exposed for what it was, a scam. Yeah. And I think the same thing could be true here, where on the LBMA, you can trade 3 billion ounces of silver per day, 3.5 times the annual global mine supply, of which it's all paper derivatives being controlled by the banks who have the money to push it around to support this illusion of dollar and Western market supremacy. When the countries that are standing for delivery now, for most of our lives, have been third world and didn't have the motivation or the coordination or the wealth to stand for delivery, well, they do now. And this is why the game is going to end in a poor fashion. You can only manipulate a market, Chris, over the period of time by pushing it in the direction that it is going. And when you have such massive demand by sovereign nations with great wealth and sophistication standing in the other direction, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Especially when those short positions are naked short, meaning you don't have the commodity standing behind it to deliver if you called for delivery. It's only a paper contract, and you can try to keep shorting the price to give margin calls to make these people say, oh, I better bail. Well, if it's a hedge fund, it may bail. But if it's a sovereign wealth fund backed by the PBOC, the People's Bank of China, they're like, okay, here's another 50 billion. Go ahead, pay your margin. We're going to stand for delivery. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So with the majority of everything being paper derivatives and people thinking that they own silver, gold, precious metals through these paper derivatives, it looks very much like what we're heading into in regards to the markets, that, we're seeing money velocity massively change in the way that it's flowing. It almost looks like we're going to have a liquidity problem, a freeze up of the markets themselves, which could seriously damage the paper derivatives. Do you think this is why we're seeing so many countries now stocking up with so much silver and gold? Because they can see what's coming down the pipeline itself, and they're preparing themselves strategically to be the strong arm once this happens. and emerge on the other side as probably one of the most wealthiest nations, should we see the precious metals, not the paper derivatives, but the actual precious metals themselves go through the roof in regards to the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, physical possession is very important. Not only that, I mean, when you look at the way most entity countries have been saving for a very long time, it's a lot of them have been buying U.S. treasuries. The debt of a broken, insolvent nation who is proven to weaponize it and take it from you if they don't align ideologically with us. And so the concept of a treasury is losing its luster. Not only that, gold has doubled its performance over the last 25 years. And when you talk about a system that is moving away from promises, opaque promises in the form of debt by a broken, insolvent country who is in many regards viewed as hypocritical, yeah, I think you're seeing a push away from those types of promises into tangible items like precious metals, like base metals, like all of these commodities that you would need to efficiently run your country. And I think we are heading, and that's why Zoltan Pozar says we're now in Bretton Woods 3, a
Yeah.
system. Sorry, my dog is freaking out. A system that is all about transparency and commodities. And so, yeah, and not only that, you know, there's this discussion of the new unit ecosystem, which is the BRICS settlement currency that was announced by Dilma Rousseff, who is the head of the BRICS New Development Bank. Dilma Rousseff also was the former president of Brazil. She's no lightweight. She said we had meetings at the BRICS meeting just a few weeks ago that coincided with the G7 meeting with Sergei Glaziev and Putin. Well, Glaziev is the Russian finance minister and the Eurasian Economic Union finance minister who's been talking about the BRICS common currency being pegged to commodities and currencies for 4 years. That's why I've been saying it. Well, she came out and said, in principle, we've agreed to this new unit, and it will be 40% gold in kilo bar form, deliverable upon request, and 60% a basket of the BRICS plus nations. Well, the key to it is that if you read the white paper on the unit, it says that the gold and the currency that will be minted in the form of this new token will be held within the borders of the countries that possess it. So when you see all of these countries, over 20 of them, repatriate their gold from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, it is partially because they don't trust the West because of the weaponization of the markets, but also because this new system, if indeed it is what they say, and they've agreed to it in principle, the gold is held within your own borders. You see, everyone used to leave their gold at the Bank of England and the New York Fed because of Western jurisdiction and Western rule of law, but it gave direct access to the LBMA with the Bank of England and to the COMEX with the New York Fed. And now all of these countries have repatriated their metal. And I think it's because the unit token, which will be the new settlement currency for energy, will be minted and held within the borders of the countries that possess it, independently and frequently audited continuously. But it won't need to be sent to a central authority like Beijing or Moscow. And just a simple Google search would pull up all of these countries that have repatriated their gold. I'll read them to you real quick. But, you know, you look at a country like India.
Yeah.
They've purchased 1.5 times the amount of gold that they bought all of last year in the first 4 months of this year and had it all shipped home, along with the 100 metric tons they've held at the Bank of England since 91. But these are all the banks that have repatriated their gold from either the Bank of England or the New York Fed recently. Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Argentina, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Belgium, Egypt, Senegal, Romania, Nigeria, Poland, Ghana, India, Turkey, France, Serbia, Venezuela, Algeria, Cameroon, South Africa, and Czechoslovakia, to name a few. They're all bringing their gold back. They're all repatriating it, not only to remove counterparty risk, not only because it's doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury, but also because I believe it will be the new system that backs the unit settlement currency that is held within all of their own borders and independently audited. And so it removes counterparty risk. So yeah, it's a big deal, and this is all about commodities. So all of these countries are buying these commodities and bringing them home, taking them off of the Fugazi exchanges by which they're using the price on these exchanges to drain them because they understand that they're rehypothecated and fractionally reserved and in essence a scam. And so why would you leave it in the West if you know as you're accumulating it that the game that the West is playing is one that is not fair you might as well bring your chips home before you're not allowed to. Like Venezuela, who asked for their gold back from England, and then no, Maduro, no, you don't. We're not going to give it to you. No. So they're doing what they can to do this in a proactive fashion.
Yeah. And it appears that if they are going to come off this fiat currency system, which is been in its death throes and been on life support for a long time now, and we are going to go back to a system that is going to be established on solid ground of precious metals backing it again, that means that people that hold precious metals now are going to see the benefit of that. But there are those people out there who still haven't dipped the toe in the water in regards to purchasing precious metals and may have been sitting on the fence looking at possibly doing this for some time now. What advice would you give somebody that's never bought precious metals before, to say, this is the time to get in, and why? Because I imagine there's probably people watching this podcast now. They may have crypto, but they've never, they may have even bought paper derivatives and have shares in silver, but nobody has actually bought physical yet. It appears to be that the time is here now that people should seriously consider getting onto the precious metals train and buying physical silver. But it's not something they've ever done before. What advice would you give them?
Keep it simple. Stick with bullion. You don't want anything collectible. You don't want anything numismatic. You don't want anything fancy. You want American Eagles, Canadian Maple Leafs, Australian Kangaroos. You want 1 ounce silver bars, 1 ounce silver rounds, 10-ounce silver bars. You want things that are bullion and bullion heavy and that are not collectible.
Yeah.
You want to minimize your premium that you're paying, but at the same time, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish by buying a much larger bar, like at the expense of saving a few bucks. And instead of buying 100 1-ounce rounds, you buy a 100-ounce bar. Well, the savings may not be commensurate with the loss of flexibility. But I do think it's the time to do it, because I think that something is going to trigger the collective awakening of the public.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you go to a period where getting product becomes very difficult. That's what we saw throughout the entire pandemic. That's what we saw during the bank collapse in March and April of last year, where demand vastly outpaces supply, premium spike, delays go. But this is at a time when you have 0.5% allocation in terms of investment across the entire United States financial matrix, from Joe and Jane Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund. And so if 5% is, which is what most financial advisors would recommend, which is way too low. But if the public at large held 5% of their assets in gold, it's a tenfold increase in demand. And like that, everything in this country is gone. So yeah. I say, you buy it. And normally I advocate for cost averaging. I think you're late in the game. I would buy a core position right now and then then you have the luxury of cost averaging. It's like you don't buy. I'm so sorry. My dog wants to climb up my head. Every time that it thunders, and it's a bad thunder and lightning, she freaks out.
We've got several of them here living with us.
I'll wake up. It's really weird. I'll wake up some nights and she's sitting on my head at 3 a.m, and I throw her off and she'll jump back up and there's nothing. And within 5 minutes, it's a huge thunderstorm. She can hear it or feel it
yeah.
Anyway, she's shaking like a leaf. I apologize.
No,
but, I think, look, trying to be objective, trying to be sincere. And normally I say you cost average. I've been buying every 2 weeks for 35 years. The laws of compounding are something I understand very well. That was the rule and the promise I made to my father in 1989 when we started this company, that I'd buy something every 2 weeks and never miss a 2-week period. And I never have. Yeah. And it's the greatest gift he ever gave me, the gift of learning how to pay and prioritize yourself first, the gift of compounding. But I would argue, in my heart of hearts, I feel we're late to the game. It's already maybe the top of the 9th inning, so to speak, if you will. And so I think, you build a core position, one that you feel comfortable with. And then as things allow and time allows and the markets allow, you add to it. But I would stick with getting things like 1 ounce silver coins, even pre-65 dimes, quarters, and half dollars, which are very utilitarian, offer great utilitarian, and keep it simple. Don't buy anything that people tell you is collectible, is going to make you a lot of money. You want straight Jane vanilla. When you build a hot fudge sundae, you start with vanilla ice cream. It's okay to have some cherries and some hot fudge, but you want everything underneath to be very liquid, very recognizable, very straightforward, where you can go on to 5 websites and see that product like that and make sure you're getting something legit and a good price. That's where we come in. And that's why in 30, almost 35 years and 10 billion in sales, we've never had a customer complaint. And Chris, well, I think where we're going, having a relationship will mean something. So that's where your people can give us a call, tell them they came from you. We'll give them extra special white glove service. We'll answer their questions. We'll give them the best prices, but we'll make sure that whatever they're doing is the right thing to do, because this is a federally non-regulated industry. And there are a lot of companies out there that lack the scruples, if you will, to do what's right, and will push people into the wrong product to own. That's not our MO. We've never had a complaint in 35 years. Your people won't be the first, I can promise you.
Yeah, and I think that's what people want in this day and age, especially when they're parting with the money and converting it into something else. It's all about the security. It's all about dealing with the right people. We're going to put the links in for the viewers and listeners here today to be able to contact you. And this is the only company that I wanted to deal with because the reputation precedes what you do. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really the greatest achievement of my life. I've been doing this since I was a 19-year-old kid. I just turned 54, and I built it from nothing in a one-room office the size of a closet to where we are today, and I take great pride in it. And that's why the people that I hire, almost every single one of them are my friends since childhood, just about. There are some that are my friends later on in life, but they were all my friends before they became my employees. It's one big family, and most of them had very distinguished careers and histories in their own right, from buying and selling their own businesses, to working on Wall Street, to graduating from Wharton School of Business, all sorts of distinguished backgrounds where anyone you talk to, my firm is more or less my family, whether directly or indirectly, and also is sophisticated enough and educated enough to speak on any of these topics in a articulate manner, and then answer your questions without pressure, focusing on getting you the biggest bang for the buck without diminishing your liquidity. All of that we will be able to do admirably, and I can assure you that.
Yeah. Now, with the quality of metals, we see like within gold, we'll have different carat ratings on gold. But is that also applicable to silver? Do we see different variants, or is it always refined to 999 pure?
Well, some of it, I mean, it really doesn't matter. Like, for example, the American Eagle is 22 karat. The Gold Buffalo American is 24 karat, but they both have the exact same amount of pure gold in it. How is that? Because the Buffalo weighs 1 ounce of pure gold, 9999, 4 nines, fine, pure, 24 karat. The American Eagle has 1 ounce of 49 fine gold in it too, plus a tenth of an ounce of silver copper alloy sprinkled on top of it, rendering the net weight 1.1 ounce, decreasing the purity to 22 karat. What it means is you could play poker with your buddies, high stakes, with those two coins. At the end of the night, if everyone's got a stack of Eagles and Buffaloes, the Eagles will look brand new. The Buffaloes will look 100 years old because they're 24 karat. In the end, the Eagle is worth every bit as much as the Buffalo, has the same amount of gold in it. So the purity is less relevant in most cases. And the same thing is true with silver. The American Eagle is 995. The Canadian Maple Leaf is 9999, the purest silver coin in the world. Does that 1,000th of an ounce mean anything? No. The Canadian Mint has the ability to refine gold 5 nines, 99999. 24 karat gold is 4 nines. Well, what the heck is 5 nines? I don't know, but it's worth a little bit more. But in the end, it doesn't matter. So as long as you're buying stuff from one of the 6 major mints of the world, US, Canada, Austria, Australia, South Africa, or the United Kingdom, that's Pepsi, Coke, Sprite, 7-Up, Dr. Pepper, A&W. You may not like the taste of one. You may not like Queen Elizabeth. You may want Lady Liberty. You may want the Philharmonic, which has no president on it or no public figures. It's got instruments on it, or, the point of it is they're all the same. And just like soda, they all drink the same. If you're dying of thirst, you may like one over the other. It's a regional thing, right? So maybe in the United States, people prefer Eagles. In Canada, the Maple. In Austria, the Philharmonic. In the UK, the Britannia. In Australia, the Kangaroo. But in the end, they are very liquid wherever you are. And the same thing about the bars, 1 ounce rounds or bars, 10 ounce, kilo, 100. As long as they're bought from name brand refineries, Johnson Matthey, Engelhard, Royal Canadian Mint, Pamp Swiss, Valcambi. There's a handful of very, very, very reputable mints. We work with them all and refineries, and you'll always get high quality product that is, again, where purity really won't matter. And we can talk about something like, the old gold coin over my shoulder there. That's the $20 gold piece pre 1933. Well, that's lower purity because it was used as currency. So there has to be alloy in it. So there's 0.9675 of an ounce of pure gold plus other weight that isn't gold, or the old pre-65 silver, dimes, quarters, and $0.50. The weight of those coins is 90% pure silver, 10% alloy. So it's not pure silver in the coin, but there is 999 pure silver in the coin.
Yeah.
But because of the alloy, it's decreased. So the bottom line is that yes, it's relevant, but no, it's not really relevant if you understand the relevance. And as long as you're buying things with that understanding, you'll never have a problem. So again, people say, well, shouldn't I buy a 24 karat coin because the Eagle's 22? No, the Eagle has a full ounce of pure 24 karat gold in it, plus a tenth of an ounce of silver and a little bit of copper to give it that resiliency, the strength, if you will. But in the end, if you melted it down, it has the exact same amount of gold as a Maple Leaf or a Buffalo or a Philharmonic or a 1 ounce gold bar. That's all 4.9 fine pure gold.
Yeah.
You just have a little pile of silver and copper next to it that came with it when you melt it down.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit tougher, which in this day and age isn't a bad thing.
No, especially if you want to hold it in your hand. Because
Yeah.
if you put a 24 karat gold coin like a Maple Leaf in your pocket all day and let it rustle around with the other coins, and then you pull your hand in, take it out, and fool with it, at the end of the day, it's going to look like shit because it's going to be scratched. And that's like in the old movies, they would take a piece of gold in their teeth and you could see your tooth mark because it's that soft. And so that little bit of alloy gives it some strength and allows it to be better used if you ever had to use it or trade it or let someone hold it.
Yeah. Currently, what would you say is the best value in precious metals to buy? Is there something that particularly stands out to you as something that people should seriously consider getting hold of right now?
365 dimes, quarters, and $0.50. Junk silver constitutional coins, dimes, quarters, $0.50 prior to 65. During the pandemic, they were the second highest premium item we sold, right behind silver eagles, because of the utility. If you take 14 dimes, there's almost exactly 1 ounce in 14 dimes. It's 0.0. There's 715 ounces in a $1,000 face value bag of junk silver. Any way you can make it, dimes, quarters, $0.50. You mix the whole thing up. If it comes to $1,000, you have 715 pure ounces. So, so conversely, 0.715 ounces in a dollar, whether it be 10 dimes, 4 quarters, 5 dimes and 2 quarters, $2.50, $1.50 and 2 quarters. Any way you can make a dollar is 0.715. So if you take 0.00715, which would be a dime, multiply it by 14, you get almost exactly 1 ounce. So you would have 14 transactions instead of 1 in that environment. And the premiums were high. We were buying them back from the public for north of $10 an ounce over spot. And they were higher than all of the other sovereign coins, like the Maple, the Britannia, the Philharmonic, the Kangaroo, much higher than all of them for 3 years during the pandemic, only second to the American Eagle. And now they're below all of them. And so they are amazing value. They give you the greatest utility. To me, it's the best value in silver by far, not even close.
Yeah. Now, we know there's a lot of market manipulation by several banks, and they have continued to do this for a long time now. But what really determines the silver futures markets?
That is what it is. It's the futures market determines the price. It's the tail wagging the dog. Currently, there are 8 commercial banks that hold the largest short position in silver, and it's the largest short position of any commodity ever traded, ever in the history of the COMEX market, of everything. It's all in this tiny little market of silver. And it's because the military industrial complex, in my mind, needs silver to build high-tech weaponry, and they don't talk about it. They've stripped it out of the supply-demand numbers. They're stepping on the price of silver. It will end badly as countries like China and India are beating us at our own game by standing for delivery. The ability to naked short the way we have for all these years is going to come to a crashing halt. So it is the price that is determined by the futures market, and that is not how it's supposed to be. The market, the underlying commodity should control the price, not the future. And it's because it was designed as a marketplace for producers and farmers and all sorts of people who needed to hedge their risk to the market. And then it all of a sudden became a casino where big banks and hedge funds can, gamble and speculate. And all of that speculation, like during the pandemic, we saw oil at negative $40 a barrel. Now, how the hell does that happen?
Yeah.
How is oil negative 40 a barrel where they're going to pay you $40 to take it? And that was because all the ports were not allowing the ships to come in, sitting in the Gulf of Mexico for weeks on end and not able to offload the oil. So we'll give it to you and we'll pay you $40 a barrel. Well, that's what happens when you have the futures market, the tail wagging the dog. And until that ends, and it will end badly because the rest of the world is using that suppression against us, they're wise to it.
Yeah.
That's the game until it ends. And it will end on a Sunday night, Monday morning. We'll wake up to a new reality, and they just can't naked short, or they'll fail to deliver. And when the failure to deliver happens, the exchange, it's the Bernie Madoff moment. The exchange is exposed. It's pulling back the curtain and seeing the little old frail wizard of Oz, not the big booming voice we thought it was. It's lifting up the skirt, basically, and that will happen at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's inevitable that we're going to see a massive correction in the markets, possibly from, maybe the debt market, the bubble that's there. But when we get this correction, and obviously we're well aware that these banks have been suppressing precious metals for some time now, is there any way of gauging what we think the percentage leap or value leap could be within precious metals, or is it just a case of what
it's too hard? Just like all of the traditional assets were distorted to the upside by suppressing interest rates and buying $8 trillion worth of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities since 2008, the Fed did, when their balance sheet at the end of the great financial crisis was 800 billion, and just a few months ago it was 9 trillion. And that's all interest rate sensitive purchases in treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, which drive down interest rates, which push up bond prices, push up real estate prices. There's something called the Cantillon effect, where when you create all of this money, the people closest to it have a disproportionate advantage. The hedge funds, in essence, can borrow that money and pay next to nothing as the Fed lowers rates and throws all that money at the system. They can borrow it at next to nothing and buy assets, and the prices go through the moon. So they're first ones to touch the money. The poor and middle class, lower class people who haven't even begun to sniff that money, as it filters down into the system, maybe they'll sell and go into other assets, and the money filters down into the system. Could take a couple of years, like we've seen all the money creation, that inflation doesn't hit the bottom masses for a couple of years. And look where we are right now. They tell us inflation is 3%. John Williams of Shadow Stats will say add 8% to that. It's 11%. It's a lie that the BLS gives us nothing but nonsense, just like revising 818,000 jobs. They lie. And so in terms of inflation, it's not 3, it's 11. And by the time that inflation hits the lower class, well, the rich bought all of these assets over the last few years that have gone parabolic, and they've made a fortune.
Yeah.
But just like those assets went way higher due to suppression of interest rates and easy money, they stepped on metals, because gold and silver are not the commodity that they want you to believe. They are monetary metals that are a reflection of the system. So as overvalued as traditional assets are, where price discovery is gone, like, ask yourself, if you have $1 million house and it was worth, $1 million at 3% mortgage, what's it worth at 7% mortgage now, when it's much harder to get a loan? What's it worth at 10% interest rates? So the value of these assets were skewed due to suppression of interest rates for 20 years and easy money. But the one asset, the assets that weren't allowed to accentuate themselves were precious metals, where the largest short position, concentrated by 8 commercial banks, Western, in silver and close to it in gold, the largest shorts that the world's ever seen on the COMEX market. Why? when the world is standing for delivery because they know that it's a big, in particular, silver's different, but these metals represent much more than just a commodity. They represent kind of the antithesis of the system. And so when they are allowed to fully express themselves, price discovery, who knows how high they will go, much higher than people think possible. And I've learned that one lesson, that markets in 34 years, the only guarantee I know is that markets go higher than people think possible. All of the Dow Jones, when I started in 1989, was 2,100, 2,300, and watch it go up 38,000. The first conference I went to in 1990, there was a guy said it would go to 10,000. The Dow was laughed off the stage. At the same time, the Japanese Nikkei was nearly 40,000 in 1989 when I started. They owned Pebble Beach, Rockefeller Center. If something had an engine or a motherboard or a TV screen, it was better in Japan. They made better engines and motorcycles and cars. They made better VCRs and TVs, and they were taking over the world. And here we are 35 years later. And today, after all of the craziness, the Japanese Nikkei is 35,000. It was 39,000 back then. It's taken 35 years to even get close to where it once was. And no one would have ever thought it had fallen all the way down to 11 or 12,000. No one would ever have thought that. So higher than anyone thinks possible to the upside in metals, and lower than anyone thinks possible to the downside in traditional assets, ultimately.
Yeah. Now, I did see last night a television show with a couple of bad actors on it. Some people called it a debate. Now, what I did see and what I've been hearing is that Trump is wanting to become almost the crypto king should he be elected. If he is elected and there's a huge push towards cryptocurrency and people investing in cryptocurrency, how would you see that affecting the metals markets?
Look, if that's an indictment to the dollar, I think ultimately good. And the funny thing is, Cynthia Loomis, who is the senator from Wyoming, who came up and spoke right after Trump. Trump spoke at that Bitcoin conference in Tennessee, and he said, yeah, if I'm elected, I will advocate for a strategic Bitcoin account. Well, Cynthia Loomis comes up after and says, yeah, well, I'm going to write a bill, and here it is, to revalue the gold held by the United States, and with the proceeds of that revaluation, use portion of it to buy the Bitcoin. So, here again, we keep hearing politicians talk about revaluing the gold. I'll read something to you that's kind of interesting. And it's from the Freedom of Information Act, and it is from 1974. And it's a meeting, a cabinet meeting between, give me one second here. Where the heck is it? Here it is. Between Henry Kissinger and Thomas Enders. Thomas Enders was the Assistant Secretary of State for Economic and Business Affairs. And this was a meeting in April of 1974, staff meeting. Goes like this. America's objective, the official transcript of the meeting quotes Enders as saying, was to move towards a demonetization of gold to begin to get gold moving out of the system. To Kissinger's question, why is it against our interest to have gold in the system? Enders replied, it's against our interest to have gold in the system because for it to remain there, it will result in being revalued periodically. Although we still have some substantial gold holdings, a larger part of the official gold in the world is concentrated in Western Europe. This gives them the dominant position in world reserves and the dominant means of creating reserves. We've been trying to get away from that into a system in which we can control. But that's a balance of payment problem, Kissinger interjected. Here's the interesting part. Yes, but it's a question of who has the most leverage internationally, Enders answered. If they have the reserve creating instrument by having the largest amount of gold, and they have the ability to change its price periodically, they have a position relative to ours of considerable power. Now, all of the gold in all of the central bank balance sheets is held in what's called the central bank, the gold revaluation account. And so if China for the past 6 months has been valuing silver at $4 higher in the West than the West on the Shanghai Exchange, enticing and incentivizing the sophisticated traders who can buy silver on the LBMA or the COMEX and deliver it to Shanghai for a $4 premium. I mean, if you're a trader, you're like, wow, I can deliver them 80 million ounces of silver and make $4 an ounce. I'm going to make a lot. I'll make $320 million. Let's do this. That they would do that, and they will deliver all of the silver at that arbitraged price. But isn't that the price? If the U.S. government were to say gold is now $120,000 an ounce and offset it against their liabilities, we are now completely and totally, our balance sheet is solvent. We're perfect, right? And offsets our liabilities. And we say to the world, we will pay $120,000 for the next 90 days. Any country that would like to deliver their gold to the U.S. Treasury will buy it. That is the price. So if you revalue the price of gold, as Thomas Enders was saying, as Roosevelt did in 1933 when he confiscated gold and then devalued the dollar by 40%, in essence, revaluing gold by 40%. And we keep hearing the head of the Dutch National Bank saying we should revalue the gold holdings to offset our liabilities. I mean, it's coming. They will revalue gold to a level that people, I think, will have a hard time believing and peg it to a new system using blockchain. Even Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, said a central bank digital currency that is not pegged to something is fiat. What did the BIS do in 2019? The Bank of International Settlements, the most powerful bank on the planet. They reclassified gold as the world's only other tier one reserve asset. Who's been buying all the gold? The central banks. What are they doing with it? Bringing it home. What is gold? The only other tier one reserve asset. The IMF came out with a report last year saying gold as an international reserve currency, comma, a barbarous relic no more, question mark. Kristalina Georgieva says, well, a CBDC not pegged to something is fiat. What are you going to peg it to? The only other tier one reserve asset. What is the new unit pegged to? The only other tier one reserve asset. What are all these countries doing with gold, the only other tier one reserve asset? Bringing it home, removing counterparty risk, and using it for the unit where the tokens are minted within the borders of the countries that possess the gold. You can see where this is all going.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
we've pissed in the punch bowl so much. Here's a glass. Want some? No, I don't. Well, here's a new fresh punch bowl. You want some? No, I don't. Well, here's one, a gold one with a cap on it. You want it? Sure.
Yeah.
And the point of it is that no one will ever drink it again until it is a new punch bowl, one that has transparency a la blockchain, immutability, blockchain, and a something standing behind it, gold, which can be delivered to the countries who request it. Not me and you, but the governments who are using the unit for purchases in energy or whatnot could say, yeah, I have enough of your digital yuan. I would actually prefer the unit token, please. Boom. So all of these countries will trade with one another using central bank digital currencies over Project M-Bridge, which is the cross-border payment system that Saudi Arabia just became a full participant in. And and the US dollar is not compatible with it. Delma Rousseff, the head of the Brixton Development Bank, said that the unit token would trade over M-Bridge. And in principle, they've agreed to it. And they have a meeting in 2 weeks here in China to ratify it, to potentially roll it out in October at their big BRICS meeting. It's serious. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly strategic positioning. I'm going to wrap this up now, Andy. This has been incredible, but I've got one question based on supply and demand.
Yeah.
Can mining keep up with the demand?
Probably not. You know, I mean, the mining industry has been beaten down for a long time. There hasn't been a lot in exploration. Big deposits haven't been found in a long time. And the mining industry, you know, if you would have told me the prices would be where they are, with gold and silver where they are, I wouldn't believe it. So, you know, probably not when the public wakes up, but they will tell you that mining shares offer extreme upside potential. Yeah. I don't sell them, but I would advocate having a position in them. I would start with the majors and the royalty stocks myself. The miners and the junior, I mean the juniors, the miners, and the exploration. They can make you rich, but they're very speculative. When the big funds wake up and say we need exposure to gold, it'll be in the very big majors, the Newmonts, the American Barracks, the Gold Corps, the Wheaton Precious Metals, which would be a royalty stock, Franco-Nevada royalty stock, Royal Gold, the big companies, First Majestic Silver, you know, these kinds of large companies.
Yeah.
They're the ones that I would have a position in, and a very small position in those assets can make you an awful lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like as good as gold sound advice to me. Now, anybody out there that's watching this who really needs to start thinking about protecting themselves, protecting their assets, and getting rid of some of that fiat currency before it comes absolutely worthless, should contact Andy and his team at Miles Franklin. We will.
Info@milesfranklin.com, and the Atlantic Underground sent me. And I promise you, we will give you not only our price list with the best prices, we'll answer your questions. Give us your phone number if you want to be contacted, because a lot of those emails go to spam. And we'll make it a good, there's no obligation, and we'll make it a good experience. I promise you that. And any questions that you've heard here, want to elaborate on, where all of us are able to chat on it. So, and I look forward to coming back with you, because it'll be fun to ride shotgun with you over the next few months as we head into what could be the craziest time of all of our lives. So
I think it will be.
yeah, in the meantime, thanks for having me.
So stay safe, everyone. Get yourself prepared, get yourself positioned. And until next time, thank you for tuning into the Atlantic Underground podcast. Please share this with everyone, get it out there, because it's okay protecting yourself. But if you protect everyone else around you, forewarn them and tell them to be prepared for what's coming. They'll thank you later. And together we'll build fantastic communities that are going to get through the next stages of what we see financially and politically coming up. So take care, everyone. And until next time, thank you again, Andy. It's been incredible. And we look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.